I've told my wife a couple times, if I was ever diagnosed with cancer, the first thing I do is fast for 20 or 40 days because the autophagy will take care of the cancer. And in fact, Dan Pompa's wife, Marilee, had breast cancer, and the doctors wanted to start her on what is a standard cancer protocol. And he said, no, we're going to go home and fast. And so they went and fasted for 20 some days. I think she did 27 days, went back in, and the cancer they couldn't find it.
This is StRest. I'm Kerstin Lindquist, health coach, author, and Emmy award-winning TV host. I've committed to helping people reduce stress through impressive health science, attainable mindset change, and biblical truth. Let's have a real conversation with zero judgment and endless solutions that you can use. You aren't alone. You can do this. Let me help you reduce stress and make room for rest.
So you know how they say it's all connected, like the people you know, and then you meet the people you know. I was working at QVC and there was a fitness model. Her name's Kim. Many of you, I'm sure if you watched QVC, you know her and you've watched her. And we are connected through not only working at QVC and our love of fitness, but also we travel together on the Chesapeake. They have a home on the Chesapeake, so we'll go boating together and we just love that piece. And she reached out to me and said, I know this guy. He was our neighbor in the past. His name's Doug, and he has this amazing story of how he kind of healed himself orally, his oral microbiome, some problems that he had that were impacting the rest of his body. And he was able to drop the weight, get healthy, get off of statins, get off of heart medication, and feel his best as he got into his 60s than he's ever felt before. She's like, you should really interview him. So I looked him up, we started talking, and can I tell you, this conversation might impact you more than any of the other health and thought leaders that we've had on this podcast. It's because he's a real guy. Now, listen, he's not all a real guy. I mean, he is a real guy, but Doug Fears is a retired Rear Admiral who advised the president on Homeland security and counterterrorism, led through global conflict. He spent 40 years in the U.S. Coast Guard, which I kind of love. But perhaps his most important mission began after he retired from the Coast Guard and he stepped into his own personal healing journey. He woke up one morning and he's like, I do not want to feel this way. How can I change? And it started with intermittent fasting. So we're going to talk about fasting, red light. We're going to talk about cold plunge. We're going to talk about how he does this all with his wife. We're going to talk about prayer and how that's a big piece of his getting healthy, hydrogen water. And we're going to have a really deep conversation about, do you have fillings? Old fillings or root canals, and what that could be doing to your body. We do all the biohacking modalities that has gotten this retired Rear Admiral to be able to be the healthiest that he's ever been at age 61. You're going to learn so much from Doug Fears. Let's go. I'm super into the research right now when it comes to creatine and collagen. In fact, let's talk creatine for a second. And the one that I trust happens to be Ancient Nutrition. Research shows that women naturally have 70 to 80% lower creatine stores than men, which means we're ideal candidates for it. And collagen we know is important not only as a protein, but it's also great for joint health. And I've been feeling the joints a little bit more. I'm in my 40s. I have that cold shoulder women's 40 thing that there's a lot of different things we can do, but it's really important to pump up your collagen. So I'm doing the two together, collagen and creatine, and there's actually a new product from Ancient Nutrition that puts the two of those together. Creatine is one of the most clinically studied supplements, and it's a game changer for women's wellness. It supports cognitive health. That's what I love the most about it. Muscle endurance and recovery, and it helps you build long, lean muscles and strength while staying sharp. And then you pair that with clinically studied collagen, which is what we get from all of our Ancient Nutrition products, and that can help you improve your joint comfort, your mobility, and your recovery. I take it right after a workout in the morning, and I still also love multi-collagen proteins and those peptides in my coffee every morning as well. So support your brain and your body and your beauty every single day with Ancient Nutrition so you can look toned, you can feel strong, and you can stay sharp. Go over to ancientnutrition.com and put in the code STREST25. That's STREST25. STREST25, STREST25 at ancientnutrition.com and get your creatine and your collagen. Admiral Doug Fears, I'm so thrilled to have you on the StRest podcast. Where are we finding you?
My wife and I and family live on the eastern shore of Maryland. So I'm in a small town called St. Michael's.
Oh, lovely, lovely town. That's kind of how we connected as well. We have mutual friends through my time at QVC and friends that we hang out with on the Chesapeake. And you're all about boats and water as well.
Yes, I am. I grew up here, and when I was 18, I enlisted in the Coast Guard because it seemed like a natural place for me to take my love of the water, love for boats, and all things on the water, fishing and so on and so forth, crabbing down here, tonging for oysters. And I joined the Coast Guard, and I intended for it to be a 4-year thing and just come home and get a job after being in the Coast Guard. But I fell in love with going to sea and ended up spending 40 years, which I think means I'm a terrible planner.
It's a wonderful profession to be in. And that actually led you to be involved in national security as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was later in my career. So I ended up serving in 8 different ships, spent about 12 years of my life at sea. And as I got more senior as an officer, assignments typically bring you back to Washington, D.C. And so I was a liaison to the House of Representatives. I worked in the National Security Council staff under 2 different presidents, was a budget examiner for a while, was in a think
Ooh,
tank for a while. And so I think I did a total of 8 different assignments in Washington. And so after a while, you just kind of become a Washingtonian. And so but that was later in my career. And I think at the core of my career, I was just a sailor.
I love that. How did you manage? I mean, I think people hear Washington, national security, even Coast Guard being on ships, 8 different ships. That's some high stress. How did you manage it? And then we can talk about how you manage it now.
Yeah. So I had the advantage of youth early on. I was able to disregard some of the principles of stress management because I was strong and I was healthy and all those sorts of things. And so how I got into the space that is the purpose of our talk today, I ended up hitting a wall when I was 55. So I was Homeland Security and Counterterrorism advisor to President Trump back 2018, 2019. And I was 55 years old and I just hit a wall. I just started to experience brain fog. That was a 7-day a week, many times 16, 18 hours a day. You do that for a couple of years and it wears you out. And so I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't eating well. I adhered to what I'll characterize as a standard American diet. And I just had a lot of unhealthy things going on in my life. And so when I hit the wall, I remember this because my wife and I lived on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. at the time. And I got onto the internet and I was just looking around like, what can I do about this? And I was overweight. My physician for the very first time in my life characterized me as being obese. And so I was
Wow.
probably 207 pounds on my 5'10" frame, compared to now where I'm between 170 and 175 on any given day. And so I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know what to reach for. I had access to the medical unit over at Walter Reed Medical Facility, which is where the president's medical physician staff reside. And I had access to these guys, and they couldn't give me any useful tips, and in modern medicine, as we are all aware, really good at treating symptoms, really not
Hmm.
good at treating chronic issues like the one that I had. And so I found a Dr. Mindy Pelz on YouTube. I don't know if you're
Love
familiar
her.
with her, but
Absolutely. She's who got me into fasting.
yeah, that's who got me into fasting. And so I started with intermittent fasting, and then I followed more and learning about detoxification, clean eating, and all those sorts of things. And so my wife, fortunately, my wife Kate, has done this with me shoulder to shoulder. So we've been able to do this together, which makes it a whole lot easier to do. But from Mindy, I got to know Ben Azadi,
Hmm.
who is a podcaster, influencer, and a nutritionist. And then through him, I got to know Dr. John Lawrence in Sarasota, Florida, and Dan Pompa out in Park City, Utah. And so have become friends with these people. But I've learned something from each of them that has been part of my journey, which is ongoing.
I love that piece. And to stop there and say, you are not a doctor. You are, even though you held an amazing position, you're kind of a regular guy in middle age who didn't have necessarily connections or anything above and beyond. You just started researching to figure out what would work for your body. And you've managed to completely change yourself and get healthy because of that. And I think that gives a lot of people hope, because some people think, oh, I have to be rich and famous and I have to have a degree in order to heal myself.
Hmm.
That wasn't your story.
No, no. And as I learned, I started to follow podcasts. And I don't know, I have probably 10 different health related podcasts that I track. And I don't go anywhere when I'm driving in my truck. I don't go anywhere without listening to a podcast. And
Amen.
typically I get a book idea. And so I've read somewhere between 140 and 150 books on cellular healing, detoxification, biohacking, all the things. And as you say, like a lot of these things you can do at no cost, but there are a lot of these things also that cost you money and cost you a lot of money. So I move at the speed of my wallet when it comes to some of those things. But yeah, we've just incorporated these things into our lifestyle.
So let's walk through them. So you started
Okay.
with intermittent fasting,
Hmm.
207 pounds, identified as obese, 55 years old. And what happened? Fasting, and then what?
Yeah. So at first it was about losing weight, and so I thought I just need to do something to lose weight. And so I started to intermittently fast with episodic 1 to 3 day fasts that I would typically tie in. And when I learned about this phenomenon called autophagy, I was
Amazing.
fascinated by it, and essentially when your body reaches a state of autophagy, which to my understanding is somewhere between 12 and 16 hours of being in a fasted state, and autophagy climbs and then plateaus at about day 3 in a fast, and then can plateau from, stay there however long you're going to be fasted. So if you're going to do a 5 day fast, you get maximum autophagy from day 3 to day 5. And so at first I was like, oh, this is cool. When your body's not consuming sugar, it's consuming fat. And so you become what's known as fat adapted. And then after a few weeks of being fat adapted, your body becomes keto adapted. And so my body now is keto adapted, fat adapted, and most mornings I'm in ketosis. And so like right now we're recording this at 10:30 Eastern time, and I'm fasted and we'll remain fasted until probably 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. And then you feast. And so not that it's exactly the opposite, but when you're in autophagy and you break your fast, you need to be able to trigger mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin. And so you need, the research shows, roughly 30 to 40 grams of protein in order to trigger mTOR. And so your body takes out the cellular garbage when you're in autophagy, and then you rebuild new cellular structure when you're in mTOR. You don't want to be in either one of them all the time. And like most people, I overfasted. So I got down to 157 pounds from 207. And that was not an ideal weight for me. And so through strength training, resistance training, those sorts of things, I've worked my way back up to 175, which I consider to be my ideal weight.
And the autophagy that he's talking about, think of it as, the dangerous cells, the bad cells. People call them the zombie cells. That's when they start. And I usually say around 17 hours is what I always try and shoot for with my clients, is that's when the good cells start eating the bad cells. That's not exactly how it happens, but it's a good way to imagine it. And you start to
Mhm.
get rid of it, which is why fasting is used in chronic conditions such as cancer. And
Mhm.
it's not for everybody, and you have to do it a specific way for your body, but
Mhm.
it works.
Yeah, very true. And my wife and I have gone through this journey a little bit. So I'm almost 61. My wife is about 9 years younger than I am. And so she was premenopausal when we started, which is why it was super useful to get to know Mindy Pelz too, because Mindy
Yeah.
focuses
Fast like a girl.
on fasting for women. And we just hosted our 74th family reunion at our property this past weekend. And one of my cousins follows what I do in the online environment as it relates to health. And she said, like, what do I need to do? And I said, well, go buy Fast Like a Girl, Dr. Mindy
Mhm.
Pelz, and then intermittent fasting for women, and just get started, right? And then you learn your body over time. And as you know, and as your audience knows, for women, it matters whether you're premenopausal,
Mhm.
perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal, so on and so forth. Guys are a little bit simpler, I think, biologically speaking and hormonally speaking, but you can manage these things through fasting, and it's free.
So I'm intrigued in your wife now as well. So when she started and she was pre, then she went through peri. Is she in menopause or post, if you're allowed to share
Yeah,
now?
she's in menopause right now.
And so can she still do the 24-hour or 3-day fasts with you?
She can. So it's really kind of a listen to your body. I mean, Mindy Pelz is very specific
Yeah.
when a woman is still cycling, when you should fast, when you shouldn't fast, when you need more protein, so on and so forth, so that you're optimizing your hormonal cycles. And really, I think it matters more for Kate to like feel right about it.
Yeah.
So she's got some guidelines that she's learned from Mindy, but it's really how do you feel while you're doing it?
You
I
have to listen to your body.
listen to your body because I feel amazing. I do all these different biohacking things in the morning and I stack all this stuff. And on top of being in ketosis and being in a fasted state, I usually feel like $1,000,000 when I walk out the door in the morning, which is
Yeah.
300 or 400% better than I felt 5 years ago.
I heard you talk about the fact that, you were 55 and you started having aches and pains and just not feeling great. And you could have easily said, I'm 55.
Yeah.
But that's not,
Well,
you didn't take that.
no, no, and I consider it maybe the nudging of the Holy Spirit. I don't know, but I
Amen.
knew there was something deeper. And as I've gotten to know this community, so Dan Pompa is a doctor and influencer in this space, has the Pompa program. But Dan has this saying that if you fix the cell, you get well, right? And so this idea of cellular autophagy, rebuilding new cells through mTOR, stimulating your body in a way that stimulates your mitochondria, which further makes your mitochondria produce more ATP, which is our energy source. And so if we're doing all these things, and then if you're able to stack them, which means doing many of them at the same time or in sequence, it just makes you feel better. And that's what I do.
We do a program that I talk about on this program called Fast to Faith with Dr. Tabitha Barber, very much in that same Mindy Pelz realm. Only it is also faith-based fasting, and she does a 40-day program. She does a Jumpstart 5-day program. So anybody can find more information about that. I'll put that in the link to the show notes as well. It is, and just about everybody can fast in some way. There's a lot of people out there who say, I can't because I'm a type 2 diabetic. I can't because this, that, or I just get lightheaded and I can't. That is all a symptom of whatever you have going on in your body that needs to be fixed before you jump into fasting. But we're meant to fast and feast. That is
That's
how
right.
our bodies are created.
That's right. That's right. And, when you've got an ailment, so I hearken back to my early days in the Coast Guard when I was enlisted. I trained as an electronics technician back in 1983, I think. And so back in that era of electronics, you used to troubleshoot as a technician. You would troubleshoot a piece of equipment, whether it's a radar, radio, something like that, and you troubleshoot it down to the component level. You had to, whether it was a resistor, a diode, or whatever the capacitor, whatever the problem was with the system, but you had to troubleshoot and isolate the problem at its root cause. And then you would replace the component and then the radio or the radar would work again. And so this idea of troubleshooting down to the root cause was trained into me a long time ago. And so as I've gotten to understand this space better, when you don't feel well, when you've got some chronic illness, you trace it back to its root cause. And you talked about type 2 diabetes. 10 years ago, people wouldn't have said that type 2 diabetes is reversible. But Dr. Jason Fung, who is a nephrologist and written a bunch of different books, and the Obesity Code and the Cancer Code and a few of these others, talks about how you can reverse all these things. So I was never diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, but I was on cholesterol medication and I was on heart
Ugh.
medication. And within 6 to 8 months, I was off everything. And I did that through diet, fasting, and some lifestyle changes.
I feel like that has to be said again because I deal with clients every day who are like, my doctor will not let me get off of a statin. I will be on this for the rest of my life. But you were on cholesterol, heart, and you also had sleep apnea that you were able to take care of by what?
Yeah, so the sleep apnea is funny. I think a lot of that, some of it's age, but, being obese doesn't help anything. And so I was diagnosed with severe sleep apnea and I wore a CPAP when I would sleep at night. I did that for probably 6 or 8 years. And the interesting thing is my sleep study doctor said guys are really stubborn about this. Typically, his patients would come in and say, my wife's been telling me for 10 years that I have sleep apnea, and I'm just now doing something about it. And that was the case with me. And so Kate would say she'd, elbow me while I was sleeping because she wanted me to start breathing again. So anyway, I've got my CPAP, I wear my mask, and there's an app for that. And so I would evaluate my sleep every morning on my app, and I was getting 95 to 100% every day. And yet I was not able to stay awake in the office, and I was just having some struggles with that. And so it wasn't until I got my Aura Ring that I started to examine other elements of my sleep. And when I was on the CPAP, I was only getting about 5 minutes of deep sleep every night, which is terrible.
It's not
And
good.
so deep sleep is the restorative sleep where your brain shrinks and you get your lymphatic system begins to remove toxins from your brain into your lymphatic system. And so I was reading a couple of books on breathing. I think Nestor's book, Breath, which is a
I
really good
love
book.
that book. That's what got me to start mouth taping, which I know you do too. We'll talk about that in a
That's
second.
where I'm going with this. I started to mouth tape. I decided to take a walk on the wild side, and I started to mouth tape, and my deep sleep just shot up. And so I stopped. I mean, if you think about it, I would recommend that anybody talk to their doctor about this and not self-initiate, but I did not talk to my doctor about it. I just stopped using my CPAP and tape in my mouth. And I watched my sleep score improve consistently over that period of time. And because I had lost the weight, my apnea was not nearly as severe. And so, and then you do other things. I go to a biological dentist. I used a palate expander. And then there are some laser technologies that they have to deal with your soft palate to make your airway more free. And so those things cost, a fair amount of money, but, making sure that your airway is good. And a lot of us don't have good, oral structure. And I think some of that goes back to Weston A. Price's research, 100, 150 years ago, whatever it's been, where he traveled around the world and he looked at different, colonies, Aboriginal folks, and found some of these blue zones and people that had perfect oral structure, with Western foods and ultra processed things, that gets deteriorated in society.
It does. So you were able to manage, and maybe it's not completely gone, but it is manageable. You're not wearing a CPAP, your sleep apnea from a combination of losing the weight, correct?
Yes.
And then going into mouth taping. And I agree, the pushback I get anytime I post something about mouth taping, I think that's the one that I get the most pushback on. And people say,
People think it's weird. Yeah.
Well, and they also think that we're just being irresponsible. And just like we both said, talk to your doctor. And if you have sleep apnea, you need to, I wouldn't necessarily do exactly what Doug did and just go off your CPAP and put on mouth tape. But read that book, read Nestor's book, and you will see. I saw the exact same thing. I mouth tape every single night, and my sleep scores are, I sleep so much better. REM and deep,
Yeah.
which is what you're looking at. HRV, which is what you're looking at as well. So I highly recommend.
If I could add to that, so Patrick McKeon is a scientist. So Nestor, and I'm drawing a blank on his first name, is an
James.
investigative journalist, James Nestor. And so he writes from an investigative journalist's perspective. He's looking into all these different breathing techniques and just kind of modes and methodology, so to speak. McKeon is a PhD who has studied breathing as an academic pursuit. And his writing is much more technical. He's written a couple of different books, but I find it useful to just kind of understand the science, but also kind of understand the comparative investigative approach that James Nestor has taken.
The intermittent fasting that you did, so that obviously had the effect of weight loss, which I always tell people don't go into it necessarily for weight loss, because what we really are talking about is cellular health and trying to get you healthy. But what else did you have to do to be able to maintain the intermittent fasting? I always recommend that you get kind of metabolically flexible with how you're eating and you clean up your diet before you jump into intermittent fasting, which I'm sure you did.
Yeah, I did them concurrently, honestly. And I think, even if somebody's got a poor diet, intermittent fasting can help you. You can still probably go eat at McDonald's and intermittently fast and get some health benefit, but you're working against yourself, right?
Right.
Because you really need to fuel your body, and there's endless number of doctors now. I think of a lot of Mark Hyman's work, where they treat food as medicine. It's
Yeah.
it's the fuel that gives you the structure and allows you to do what you need to do to be healthy and fit and muscular, and all those sorts of things. But it's it's my understanding that most medical schools don't teach any nutrition, and at best, I think Dr. Hyman's daughter just graduated from medical school, and he said she had like 1 4-hour course
Yeah.
and
I've heard
4
10
years of
hours if
instruction.
you're lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's understanding those things, and then it's through trial and error that you figure out what the right balance for you individually is. And so just know that you can't fast too much and you can't feast too much, because every time you stick something in your mouth, you trigger mTOR. And so whether it's a handful of almonds and you think, well, that's no problem, but most Americans are putting stuff in their mouth like probably 40, 50, 60 times a day. And the only thing that I'll consume when I'm fasted is water and black coffee. And then the coffee choice, we use Purity Coffee. I don't have any financial stake in that company, but
Is it mold free or what is it?
it's mold free and it's tested to be mold free. Dave Fastry's got a brand called Danger Coffee, and it's like mineralized and tested for mold. But a lot of bulk produced coffee has mold in it.
Right.
And so you got to be careful about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the first place to go is organic, and I do a lot of decaf as well because I just love the experience of coffee and, Swiss water processed, but I've been really looking more into the mold-free as well. I've seen some people who've had some amazing results. Like, for instance, if you have coffee in the morning and then you're just peeing all the time, that is toxins coming out of your body. If you switch to a mold-free, you might see a change in that and realize, wow, what that's been doing to my body.
Yeah. Well, there are other brands out there, but the idea here is there are brands that are available to you that are tested to be mold free. And so
Yeah.
why not? So we subscribe and save to a lot of these sorts of things, but Purity is the brand that we use.
So let's talk about the mold, because you also, and the reason that I originally wanted to have you on the show was because of your oral health story.
Mhm.
Talk to us about that.
Okay. Well, so I am of the era that cavities were filled with amalgam fillings. And so I had 7 amalgam fillings in my mouth. Amalgam fillings have roughly 50% of the content of the amalgam is mercury. So as I was working to get well, I got tested for a suite of different toxins. I tested positive for mercury toxicity. I tested positive for black mold poisoning, and I tested positive for Lyme disease. And I later tested positive for babesia, which I had never heard of. But that's another tick-borne illness that is somehow it gets into your red blood cells. And so it diminishes your body's ability to deliver oxygen around your body. And so I've been successfully treated for all 4 of those things, and I no longer have them. But the mercury source was most likely from my mouth. We don't know exactly what that cause is. And that really started, there's a doctor by the name of Tom Levy that's written a book called The Hidden Epidemic. And The Hidden Epidemic is all about oral health. And so Tom is a cardiologist by training and education, but he studied under this guy named Dr. Hal Huggins, and Hal Huggins was the original biological dentist. He began to challenge the materials that we put into our mouths as part of a dental procedure. And so this following is now, just generally referred to as biological dentistry. And you can find a biological dentist near you. There's a website, IAOMT.org, and you can find a biological dentist near you and get into some of these things. But what Tom essentially said was that 95+% of all your heart disease comes from your mouth. And let that sink in for a little bit. I mean, that's a stunning declaration. It was to me anyway. And so what are the things in your mouth that are a problem? Amalgam fillings because of the mercury, root canal disease teeth. And I had one of those. It's since been removed and replaced with a prosthetic tooth. But I had that in my body for 15 years. Think about this for a second. Root canal procedure is the only procedure in all of medicine where the doctor goes in and kills the tissue and then he leaves it in your body.
Yeah.
And
Rotting away.
so the toxicity that surrounds the root canal disease too. And then I had all four of my wisdom teeth out when I was 18. And so when you pull a tooth out of your jawbone, the healing will cover up the hole that was left, called a cavitation in dentistry. So I just recently, these things are pricey, but I just recently had all my cavitations filled. And the biological dentist that I went to for that was out in Park City, Utah. So I flew out to Utah to have this procedure done. A doctor by the name of Scott Chandler, shout out to Scott. But he, I paid a little bit extra to have what was in the cavitations tested. So he sent it he extracted it during the procedure and he sent it off to a laboratory. There were 16 different toxins in the fluid that was retained in my cavitations. And it was on a scale of kind of green, amber, red being the worst and bright red being the very worst. 15 of the 16 were bright red. So I don't even know what the toxins were called, but those things have been sitting in my head for 40 years. And so there's a detox protocol that goes with these things as well. So, and there's a proper way to remove these things. So there are some doctors that remove mercury fillings, but they're not what's considered to be safe certified, right? And so if you're safe certified, the doctor's actually got an N95 mask on. They use latex to cover your entire mouth. And the whole idea is as you're drilling to remove the mercury vaporizes and you don't want to reabsorb it.
Yeah, you don't want it back in the rest of your body. Right.
So all these things, they clean up. And I was talking to Dr. Chandler about this when I was out in Park City. And he has had patients who have had acute pain or acute problems somewhere in their body, knee pain, hip pain, whatever. He fixes the cavitations and their pain goes away. It's amazing to understand that you can feel better. And back to your earlier point, there was a part of me that was like, I'm 55, I'm getting older, I'm not as fit as I used to be. I used to run a lot, I used to lift more weights, and I'm in better shape at 60 than I was at probably 40, 45. And I want to be better shape at 70 than I was, maybe when I was 35.
And you can. And I want to point out again, this was a guy who was considered obese. Even though you look at pictures of you and you wouldn't even, I wouldn't think that, but technically, yes. And on cholesterol medication, on heart medication, wore a CPAP machine. And many people at age 55 would think it's just going to get worse from here. It has gotten immeasurably better by you investing the time, the energy, the money into getting these things done. So somebody who maybe is questioning the oral piece of it. Okay, if you are in this age group and you have amalgam fillings, if you have you can get tests, and pretty inexpensive tests these days for mercury in your body, and usually will point then towards, my fish intake. But that could be a key of what's going on in your mouth and in your body, correct?
That's correct. Back to Dan Pompa, because I'm so familiar with his work, he has the five R's of detoxification. I can't remember what they all are off the top of my head, but the very first one is to remove the toxin, right? And so this procedure is part of removing the toxin. I should also mention that biological dentists, by and large, use three-dimensional cone beam scans. And so unlike two-dimensional x-rays that we all grew up with, the 3D cone beam scan can be spun around, the imagery can be spun around, and you can see all these things on the image.
We'll be right back. Don't go away. It's just getting good.
On StRest, we talk a lot about supporting the systems in your life that hold you up, your habits, your routines, sleep, but that also includes your feet. Remember that song we used to sing, knee bone connected to the hip bone? That's not right, but you know where I'm going with this, right? It's all connected, and it starts with your feet. And if you're like me, you probably sacrificed comfort to style more times than you can count. I was able to join Revitalign when I worked at QVC to create really, really great shoes, flip-flops, sandals for you for many years. And now they are a sponsor of StRest. I love this brand My entire family wears them. It's all about aligning your body from the ground up, literally, but also doing it with super cute styles. I wear them around the house, on long days of filming, even traveling, of course, down at the beach. And the difference is my body feels better at the end of the day. And that's what I want for you as well. Going into a new season, make sure you get yourself new good shoes. And we have a discount for you. Visit wacoshoecompany.com. That's WACO shoecompany.com and enter the code Kerstin, Kerstin 20 for 20% off everything from really cute wedges to boots to sneakers. Get out there and get your sneakers. That's Waco Shoe Company, WACO shoecompany.com and put in the code Kerstin 20, Kerstin 20. So you get 20% off and support yourself from the ground up.
And what I've discovered, because I've been to 3 different biological dentists at this point, I started this when we were living in Florida. So I was going to a guy in Miami, and then I've got a routine guy I go to here, which is actually up closer to you in Wilmington, Delaware. And then I went out for the cavitation because it's kind of a specialty surgical procedure. And there are nerves in your jawbone that if the remediation for the cavitations isn't properly done, you could damage the nerves and lose feeling in your jaw. So find somebody that's done quite a few of these things.
Yeah.
But what I've learned over time is even experienced dentists have difficulty reading the 3D cone beam scan. So you really need to find somebody that's got some depth in biological dentistry.
Yeah, very, very important. You know, we don't really think about our oral microbiome, which we're learning more and more about, just like our gut. We're also learning more and more about our oral microbiome and how that impacts our health from, top to bottom. And we're not told by our doctors to worry about it. The only time in your life is when you're pregnant. You hear, oh, make sure you're flossing and make sure you don't get gum disease. And it would make sense that if it's going to impact a woman while she's pregnant and her fetus all the way down, it's going to impact the rest of your body, the rest of your life.
Yeah. Well, what I've heard a number that a newborn baby typically has anywhere from 150 to 200 different toxins, discrete toxins in their body that they get from mama, and it's just like the environmental toxins are ubiquitous, and they're even, we were talking earlier a little bit about water. We went to great expense we've got groundwater. We had it tested. We found that we had arsenic in our groundwater, which is not uncommon for our area. Fortunately, didn't test. We're in farm country, and we didn't test any glyphosate.
Thankfully.
We tested for it, and it tested negative for glyphosate, so that's good. But even still, I mean, we had a system installed that had a big double filtration for arsenic content. We structured water, and I don't know how much you've talked about structured water on your podcast before, but it's considered to be the 4th phase of water. We grew up understanding solid, liquid, gas, and structured is now the 4th phase of water, and that's a whole academic pursuit. We've got a system that was quite spendy, but we get really clean water, remineralized and hydrogenated. So I do hydrogen water every morning. Drink a lot of water.
So wait, does your water come out hydrogenated, or do you put it in something else because I love hydrogen water and
I do both. So the system that we purchased is called Spring Aqua, and a guy named Kenny Lou is the entrepreneur that did that. I bet you I spent an hour and a half on the phone with him as we were shopping around. I said, I'm interested in your water system, but it remineralizes the water and it hydrogenates the water. So it comes out of the spigot with hydrogen, but then I have hydrogen tablets on top of that. And so my morning routine, I get up, we have a guest house next door to our house. And in the master suite of the guest house, I have an IR sauna, I have full body red light panels, and I have a pulsed electromagnetic field therapy mat. And so the first 16 minutes of my morning is on that PEMF mat. I do breath work. I get a glass of clean water. And then as soon as I'm done with the PEMF therapy, I'll drop a couple of tablets, hydrogen tablets, in my next glass of water. And I'll drink that as quickly as I can as soon as it's dissolved. That's supposed to reduce inflammation in your body. And so it's just part of the routine.
So let's go back because I'm very interested in your morning routine. I'm going to start with, are you retired?
No. No, I
No, so
just
you're still working.
I don't. I run a small company and do a bunch of, as you might expect, somebody that came out of Washington. I'm a senior advisor to
There you go.
think tanks and consulting companies and that sort of thing.
So other than it's too expensive to be healthy, I hear I don't have time to be healthy. So
Yeah.
you are prioritizing, even as somebody who's still working at 61, you're prioritizing, what do you think? How much time in the mornings to go through your routine?
I probably, if you rope in meditation, my wife and I read the Bible every morning, spend some time in prayer, and so when you tie all that together, probably the better part of 2 hours.
Okay. So what
Now
time are
I
you getting
will.
up?
I get up between 6:30 and 7:30
Okay.
normally, probably closest to 7. But the other thing is I work under my own terms these days.
Yeah.
And so for years I had to get up at 5:30 and you get out to work. And so now I can start my day at 9, I can start my day at 9:30 or 10. And it really depends on what's on the docket for the day as to how early I go in. If I need to get up early, I do. I got up this morning at probably 6 because I had a handful of things to do, and I came to meet with you here from another meeting. Uh, I just it's not negotiable for me because it just makes me feel good.
Yeah. And it's what's keeping you healthy. And it's
That's
what's
right.
going to keep you in the things that matter the most to you, which it sounds to me like in your purpose and in your drive with the Lord, with family, with
Yeah,
feeling good. And so sometimes there's hard decisions that have to be made. Sometimes you have to change a job or make a change in your career path if it's not allowing you to prioritize time with the Lord and health, because those do need to be your non-negotiables.
that's right. That's right. And it's I was just thinking. My wife and I talk about this a lot, but I've been working on my prayer life and trying to make that something that's less mechanical.
Yeah.
And I'm actually in the midst of reading Tim Keller's book on prayer, and it just talks about how to unpack these things. But it's like, it's not negotiable. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I want to be the best Christian that I can be. I need to be an example to my family and my children. And so there's no substitute. You got to read your Bible, you got to pray. And having depth in both of those things is meaningful. And I'm almost ashamed to admit I never read completely through the Bible until I was about 43, 44 years old. I read through it for the very first time. I've now been through it probably 8 or 10 times. And it's not a volume, and it's not I don't want to sound like a Pharisee. I'm not doing things to be external. This is my private life, and these things are important to me.
Also part of those non-negotiables. And I do find that the health piece and being lockstep with the Holy Spirit can go hand in hand. A lot of these practices that you're talking about that I do, sauna, cold plunge, which we'll get into, breathing techniques, all of that to me, I invite the Lord into. If I'm
Mm,
trying to focus on something, if I'm meditating on something, if I'm breathing through something, it's usually scripture and prayers to the Lord that's happening at the same time. So they can be hand in hand.
yeah, no, because if you would have asked me 5 years ago, do I meditate? I would have said no, because that had conjures up some other spiritual dimension that I
Right.
just don't think I exercised. But in reflecting on that, my time in the Bible is in fact meditation. And so my time in prayer is that as well. When I'm doing breath work, I have a difficult time concentrating on anything else other than breath work. I started by following the Wim Hof method, and I downloaded the Wim Hof app, and then I have another app called Othership, and subscribe to both of those. And so what I do when I get onto my PEMF mat in the morning is the Othership exercise. It's really simple in Othership. It's up. You do that when you wake up, and it's down. You do that when you're getting ready to go to bed. And then they've got a category called all around. So if you want to, in the course of the day, you just want to concentrate a little bit more, you can stop and do a guided breathwork session. But those vary. I think the shortest one's probably 3 minutes, and the longest one in up is probably 15 minutes long. And they mix it up. So you do a different one every day. And because I'm on the PEMF mat for 16 minutes, which is 2 full PEMF cycles,
And
they
so
run
for
on
2 seconds, tell people
yeah.
what that is, because I don't think everybody knows the
Yeah,
mat.
it's an artificial way to ground. So grounding's really important if you can get out into your yard in the morning, It's important for your circadian rhythm to be able to look at the sunlight as it's rising. But if you stand on the ground or you have the benefit of living on the beach or something like that, grounding brings electrical energy into your body. And so pulse electromagnetic field therapy is just an amplified grounding, if you will, but it's artificial. So PEMF therapies, there's a whole high power, low power dispute, I think is probably the best way to characterize it. But I use low power PEMF, and one full cycle is 8 minutes long. And so any factor of 8, I just selected 16 minutes. And so I breathe the entire time I'm on the PEMF mat. So I'll do my other ship workout, my breath work. And then with whatever time's remaining, I will switch to my Wim Hof app and breathe. And it just makes me feel good. And so I check my oxygen level while I'm doing breath work. And when I'm breathing deeply, I get up to 99, 100% oxygen saturation. And then during the breath work, when you do a breath hold, sometimes I get down to like 65% oxygen. And like most other things, the cycling into and out of, whether it's fasting, whether it's breathing, or whether it's holding your breath, or whatever it is, these are all hormetic stressors. And so Dan Pompa talks a lot about this, but the idea behind a hormetic stress is it's just enough stress to stress your body and your body adapts to it. And when you have too much stress, then it becomes a chronic stressor, and that's not healthy. And so when we do these things, whether it's breath work, whether it's fasting, whether it's, whatever it is, IR sauna, cold plunging,
Right.
they're all hormetic stressors to your body. And you can do too much. And, for example, when we do our IR sauna, my wife and I typically go in there together, and I can easily do another 10 or 15 minutes than she can. So she'll usually do 20 to 30 minutes. I usually do 35 to 50 minutes, and our bodies are just different. And so we can handle that a little differently. And then our groundwater here is in the upper 50s degrees Fahrenheit. And so I do a cold shower every morning. So I'll do a hot shower to get all lathered up and everything else, but you always end on cold. And I'll just take a cold shower, and I can just feel the shiver in my spine. It's really good for you, and it makes you feel like $1,000,000.
Our bodies are too temperature adapted, and this is a huge part of our cellular energy and our cellular recovery is getting back to being exposed to hot and cold. So even like we're recording this in the end of July, it is very, 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 very hot. I encourage you, embrace that, get outside. Like be in the heat. You can't get a sauna, you can't get a cold plunge, be in the heat, take a cold shower.
Yeah.
We need to be able to allow our bodies to do those swings. It's the same thing with feasting and fasting, restricting the food and the feasting. We are in a world where we are too middle of the line.
That's
and
right.
it's part of the problem with our health and our cells not being healthy.
Yeah. Well, and you're reminding me as part of my daily routine, when I come into the office, I've got over in the corner of my office room, I've got a Go Ruck rucksack.
I just used mine this morning.
Yeah. And I put, I've got about 40 pounds over there, and I strap that on my back a couple times a day, and I'll walk the length of town back and forth. Probably just kind of a weird guy to a lot of people that just pass through
No,
town.
I think it's great. I tell women, like you can't get out of the house. You're not going for a walk. Wear it around the house. Doing laundry with a 40-pound Go Rock, and start at 10, start at 5 if you need to. But it's great for posture. It's great for bone density, cardiovascular. It's fantastic.
You're reminding me of 3-dimensional vibration therapy too. One of the biohacks that we have. So we have a thing called a power plate.
Yeah.
Actually, we had Kim try it because she's a big exerciser, and she doesn't.
Because Kim and I used to sell that at QVC together.
Yeah. So she had one that was a 2-dimensional. This is 3-dimensional, a little bit better. And so these things are used by astronauts. And so NASA uses these when you've been weightless in space for a period of time. 3-dimensional vibration therapy is part of your reacclimation to gravity. And so all of that stuff, it improves blood circulation, improves lymph flow, it improves bone density. And like you
Hmm.
had me at hello with that one, because it's,
Yeah.
everybody just thinks we're managing our bone density decline. But there are ways to improve your bone density. That should be important for anybody to age. And my mother, who's she's 87, we gave her a vibration plate, and so she was holding fluid in her legs, and I just said, "Ma, just sit on a chair next to it and put your feet on top of the vibration. You don't really even need to stand on it if you don't want to,
Right.
and you get some benefit." And she immediately felt better with that kind of therapy, so it's part of her routine now.
What else in the morning? So prayer, time with your spouse in prayer, even better, because community is so important. The aspects of our health, how you eat, how you sleep, how you move, and relationships and spirituality. So you're hitting that. You're grounding. Do you sleep with a grounding mat? How do you feel about
I
those?
do, yeah. I've got a grounding mat that's on our mattress as a mattress topper, and then
Yeah,
our
us too.
pillowcases similarly have grounding material. So we sleep on a grounded mat. My water in the morning, I try to drink 3 or 4 16-ounce glasses of water before I leave the house, and then I drink water through the day. I put some Himalayan salt I salt my water pretty regularly.
Okay.
I do hydrogen tablets. We do a lemon slice in the water in the morning to get that citrus, and that helps with digestion. Red light
Red light.
therapy. Yeah, we use
Yeah.
red lights. So in our guest house, we have full body panel. And so you just get your birthday suit and climb between the panels. But we also have a couple of portable handheld red light panels, and Kate and I take turns with them. And so 10 minutes, I typically do it over my abdomen in the morning. I'll do it over my heart, and then I'll do it on my neck, and then I'll just do it in the back of my neck. 10-minute red light session, and either if she gets to it first, she gets to it first, or, but one of us will cycle through. We got 2 different panels, so we can both do them at the same time, or you could do 2 at a time. And so I wouldn't do without the red light.
Are you doing all of these modalities every day? Are you cycling through them?
Do them every day. Do them every
Yeah.
day. And when I had my cavitation surgery done, I went through a healing process. And so I would take these 2 portable panels, and I would do red light on both sides of my jaw as part of my healing protocol. But I've also got an ozone generator. So I would make ozonated water, and I would rinse, which is an antibacterial. And so I would rinse my mouth as part of my healing protocol. And then I've got some special supplements that are specifically for bone density. So as that heals, I want it to heal properly.
Being somebody who was in Washington and still has the hands and toes in the space, how do you feel like we're doing these days as a country in helping with health?
Yeah, not well. Um, uh, I'm really excited about this MAHA movement,
Hmm.
Make America Healthy Again. I hope that there are some durable policy that comes out of this effort. And what do I mean by that? It's too easy when you're at the White House. It's too easy to just throw executive orders at stuff. And so that's one instrument of presidential power. New president comes in, the old president CEOs are going to get thrown out. There's going to be new executive orders that come into force. And so I would not consider them to be very durable in terms of policy. And so when you make strategy and you make policy and then you implement strategy policy, there's a lot of different buckets this MAHA effort can move in. And it's going to be resisted by big pharma and big food, because big pharma and big food are part of the problem. There's a time and a place for some of these things. And so, when I was a liaison to the House of Representatives, there was a gentleman who was a dairy lobbyist, and his son was in the Coast Guard. So he would come by the Coast Guard office, and we became friends. But I saw that guy on the Hill probably 4 days a week. And you've got people like this from all the industry lobbying your members of Congress. And so there's going to be some headwinds to being able to do the things that are most important to do. But if we can get rid of things like seed oils, improve the ability to have regenerative farming take root, improve soil quality, like all these things are what I would consider, if I was writing the strategy, I would have strategy that deals with all these different things, right? And then I would try to incentivize industry to move in healthy directions for what our country needs, because you can't slap, policies that are punitive towards industry. You can do that, but they're just going to do what they can to make money. And so if you give them a pathway to come to another outcome, and there's going to be a couple of areas like agricultural chemicals, for example, you're going to fight to get back to a place where regenerative farming is preferred. But I think all those different things can be structured in a way that's durable. And I'd love to see that happen. I'm actually, Dan Pompa's got a podcast. He just started a new one. And so I'm going to go out to see him next month. And we're going to talk about MAHA and policy and what would Doug do if he was there? Not that any of those people are listening to me.
We should always ask that question in our daily lives. What would Doug do? You're speaking my language with regenerative farming. That's something that I'm very, very passionate and committed to. I'm working with a new brand called Elevate Organics, which is all regenerative. And it is so important because our soil is a problem. People say that they want to be able to get everything that they can just from the food. Why do I have to take supplements? But you can't, because our soil is a problem.
Yeah. Have you ever seen The Biggest Little Farm, the film?
I haven't. I should watch it.
You should watch it with your family.
Okay.
So a guy named John Chester and his wife Molly are the owners, proprietors of the biggest Little Farm. It's in Southern California. It's about 220-acre farm. But John is a videographer for Nat Geo, some of the big like wildlife things. But it's the cinematography is beautiful. But John grew up down the street from my wife Kate, and so they were in elementary school together. And the cool thing is there's another lady who produces The Biggest Little Farm, who also was a childhood best friend of my wife, and she produces Criminal Minds. And so she's a big producer. And so she helped John and Molly film this Biggest Little Farm, but it's for all ages. And it tells this wonderful story over the course of like 7 or 8 years, how they took a dry and arid monocrop environment and they brought it back to life. And the soil quality and the soil depth and all the things improved, and beautifully done. I highly recommend watching it. It's on, I think it's on Netflix. It's either Netflix or Amazon Prime.
I will absolutely watch it. I'm always looking for good things that I can actually watch with my family. Did your wife grow up in California?
No, John grew up down in West Ocean City, Maryland, which is where my wife grew up.
Yeah, that's great.
And so did Erica Messer, who's the producer.
Supplements. Before we go, top supplements, ones that you take, ones that you think that have changed your world.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a particular supplement that I have this conversation with my friend, Dr. John Lawrence, frequently. He'll say, "Hey, try this. You'll feel it." And I just don't feel it. And so there are things that I do. I have a stack, and I don't know that I have it exactly right. But there's an app called Suppco, SUPPCO. And it's a new tech, and they've independently analyzed all the different vitamin brands and vitamin types. And so they actually give your stack a score. And it's probably one of the most useful tools that I've been able to find. And Dr. Mark Hyman is affiliated with somehow with Suppco. And so they've got his stack. Like, what does he do? And he's just a little bit older than I am. And that doesn't answer your question, what's in my stack, right?
No, but I'm going to get that app right now.
Yeah. It's a free download, and you've got to go into your cabinet and scan all the different things that you're taking. But I take vitamin C every day. I take a urolithin alpha supplement. I take magnesium every day. Most people are deficient in magnesium.
Yeah, we need magnesium.
And so as you get some of these things dialed in, and that, by the way, is part of my morning routine. I'll take a vitamin D, A, K, and E, which are all the fat-soluble vitamins. Dave Asprey has a brand that he just calls Vitamin Dake. And so we each do one of those. The fat-soluble vitamins allow you to absorb more minerals. And then we use a liquid mineral supplement called Beam Minerals, BEAM. And then we use electrolyte, the element,
MT. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Element's one of my favorites as well.
So we just do all those different things to supplement. But I used to get bad leg cramps, and I didn't realize I was magnesium deficient. But because I test my blood twice a year,
Mhm.
and I do that through an organization called Function Health. So it's a
Yep.
subscription, and so I think it's $500 a year, and they get like 130 or 140 different markers. And I was taking too much magnesium at one point, and so I've been able to dial in my dosage. A lot of vitamin D. I take a lot of my vitamin D, and so when I hear of something new, there's so many different things and gimmicks and whatnot, and what I'm really interested in is purity of whatever the
Yes.
supplement is that I'm taking. I take CoQ10, a bunch of different ones, but the supplement app makes recommendations. But it tells you, it's on a scale of 1 to 100%, how pure it is. Are there fillers? Are there any, other things that might not be healthy that are added to whatever the supplement is?
We've talked a lot about stressors, good
Mhm.
stressors that help build resilience, and then
Yeah.
also removing some of the stressors from your body, like constant snacking. Snacking is a stress on the body, like the fillings that you had. But if you could give somebody one thing to take away today to help reduce the bad stress and increase the good stress in their life, what would it be for you?
I'd probably go with Breathwork. It's free, it's quick, and you actually feel amazing after you do it
Yeah.
because your body's not fully oxygen saturated. And if you really want to take a walk on the wild side, you can go buy yourself an exercise with oxygen therapy set up, EWAT, that saturates your body with a concentrated oxygen. And if you think about it, how well you feel is always a function of how much ATP you produce, adenine triphosphate. It's our energy source. It comes from the mitochondria. So anything you can do to stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis, the production of more mitochondria, and stimulate more ATP production. Because the simple fact is, when you run out of ATP, you die. And it's like those things are foundational to you feeling well and for your body to heal. And we talked about fasting. We've talked a little bit about cancer. I mean, I've told my wife a couple times, if I was ever diagnosed with cancer, the first thing I do is fast for 20 or 40 days because the autophagy will take care of the cancer. And in fact, Dan Pompa's wife, Marilee, had breast cancer, and the doctors wanted to start her on what is a standard cancer protocol. And he said, no, we're going to go home and fast. And so they went and fasted for 20 some days. I think she did 27 days, went back in, and the cancer they couldn't find it.
And people say, "Oh, that's impossible. You die." No, 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 no. I mean, I think the highest fasting on record was upwards of 300 days.
Yep,
Somebody did.
380 something, severely obese gentleman, and he did it under
Yes.
doctor's care, and he took mineral supplements along the way so that his body didn't stop functioning, but it became fat adapted, and that's his fuel source.
Yeah.
Back to the cancer too, in biological dentistry, the nexus here. So in Chinese medicine, every tooth maps to an organ in your body, and there are teeth in your mouth that map to your breasts. And so I have heard it said at least 4 or 5 times by physicians that are in this cancer space that women that have been diagnosed with breast cancer many times will have a root canal disease tooth in the same Chinese meridian as the breast. And so you fix the root canal and the cancer can go away. And
Wow.
so these things all tie together, and it's amazing. God gave us amazing bodies.
He did.
And if you just remove the interference and you're able to focus on fixing the cell, which requires everything that you stick into your mouth, to be good for your body, a fuel source for your body, and your body can heal itself, which is just
Our bodies, they want to
amazing.
be healthy. Our bodies
That's
want
right.
to be healthy. Sometimes we have to slow down long enough to be able to hear the Lord and spend some time with our bodies and really give it the attention that it needs. I'm going to pray for us before we close. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing Doug here, for his amazing story to help so many people. I pray that you just have spoken your word through us to others, and that you give people hope today, and that they take something away to be able to make a change in their lives and feel better. Keep us all safe. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Doug, where can people find you? Are you out there?
No, you can find a little digital exhaust on me if you Googled my name. It's I don't work in this space. This is just a
Mhm.
passion project for me. I do at some point, my wife and I want to open up a little like biohacking, make your life better sort of wellness center, but I'm too busy with my day job right now trying to do that. But I don't sell anything. And it's one of the reasons why I do get asked to speak episodically in health environments. And I think one of the reasons that I'm a credible voice is that I'm a serious person.
Yeah.
I've had a very serious career.
Yeah.
And I'm a thoughtful person, but I don't make any money off this stuff. I don't like the people that work with me here. One of them refers to me as Doug GPT. And he'll just text me and say, "Hey, I was thinking about doing this. Should I do this or should I do that? Or which seed oils are good and which ones are bad?" And that sort of stuff. And so I'm kind of a lifeline to the people that know me. And I don't know all the answers, but I'm still studying every day, still curious.
Well, you are a true blessing. The Lord has given you a gift, and thank you for sharing your story with us. And when you're ready to open up that, first people to call are me and my husband. We will drive down and we'll be a part of it because that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. No,
Continue to be in good health.
that's great. Well, thank you for having me today. I really
Thank you
appreciate it.
so much. It was great to meet you.
All right. Take care.
Hi, friends. Wasn't that a great conversation? He was amazing. The big takeaway that I want you to have for that was that he was considered obese. He was on heart medication. He was on statins. He was a guy at 55 years of age who was starting to feel worse. He had sleep apnea, and he was able to reverse it and able to get off of those drugs and feel better than he felt in his 40s, now in his 60s, from first diet and exercise, fasting, and then biohacking in a way that worked for him, and to be able to listen to his body and do it along with his wife. I wanted to put a point on a couple of the things that we talked about and let you know that there's resources for you in the show notes. So the first one is he talked about supplements and really high quality supplements. I recommend Designs for Health. As a practitioner who works with health coaching clients, this is the brand that I recommend and that I give to people. It's also where I do all my functional testing through, like a GI map. So Designs for Health, vitamin D, magnesium biglycinate, also a neuromagnesium I love as well, and omegas, and so much more. I'll put a link to Designs for Health and actually a coupon code for you for them as well. Superpower is the Function Health type program that I use. Function Health is great. I'll put a link to them, but Superpower is who I use. Superpower walks you through your blood work. You get the full workup of blood every 6 months. You also get practitioners who are analyzing it for you and give you recommendations on what you're supposed to be doing. It's a really great platform and an app as well. So that's Superpower, and I'll put a coupon code in there for Superpower. Buoy is what I like, along with Element, LMNT. Buoy, I have a coupon code for you, and that's those drops that help you with hydration. So it's one of the biggest problems that we have. 95% of US adults over the age of 50 are dehydrated. Buoy hydration drops, which are virtually tasteless, 64% more hydration than your water. So definitely use your Buoy. Go Ruck, I'll put a coupon code for you on Go Ruck. I'm throwing out all these things to you. Basically what I do is all of the items that I love and that I use, I reach out to these companies and I say, hey, can we give my viewers and people who follow me on social media a discount when I talk about these? And so they give us these coupon codes. So I want to share so you can be able to get some of these things at a little bit lower cost, because I know it's very expensive. And Go Ruck is what he was talking about that he wears to walk around with. I do it as well. And it helps with so many different, your posture, your bone health, cardiovascular. And then the other one is Fast to Faith. That's the intermittent fasting program that I am a part of. There's a 5-day challenge that I'll put a link on, which is completely free to take you through first 5 days of fasting. There's a 40-day program. I'll also put a link to that, which I think is even more important, and that everybody should go through that. You will do a 24-hour fast in there. You will do a 3-day fast in there. It's all under the guidance of Dr. Tabitha Barber, who, by the way, is the most amazing faith-based gynecologist if you need that in your life. So a lot of great resources for you. Always check the show notes in all of our shows, because I'm going to put as much as I can that goes back and talks about what our guest was talking about to help you. And you better believe that you can expect us to have a deeper dive into the oral microbiome on a future episode of StRest, because that was fantastic. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day. God bless. Coming up on the next episode of StRest, we're going to talk resilience. I would hate for you to take away from this podcast that all stress is bad. It really isn't. And I think we've heard that over the last few months from a lot of doctors and researchers and even faith leaders, that not all stress is bad. And in fact, it's important for us to have some stress in order to live a healthy life. And that's what I hope for you. Now, stress needs to be followed by rest, hence the name of the podcast. So I'm going to talk about that idea of good stress that is followed by rest so that you can heal and then build back up. But also I'm going to give you 5 or 6 different really good stress building activities that you can do that can help bust stress. So things like cold plunge and sauna and fasting. We're going to talk about all of that in the resilience episode of StRest. That's coming up next time.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help others find the podcast and join our community. Follow me on social media at Kerstin.Lindquist for daily tips and inspiration. And visit my website at www.Kerstin-Lindquist.com to sign up for our newsletter and receive exclusive content. The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition. The host of this podcast is a certified health coach and medical researcher, not a licensed medical professional, and the content shared does not constitute medical advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we encourage you to do your own research and consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your healthcare treatment plans. Thank you for joining me on this journey to reduce stress and make room for rest. Remember, you're not alone. Keep coming back, share your story, ask for help, and give yourself grace.